Welcome to another episode of Courageous Conversations Live. I'm your host, Pierre Quinn, and I am excited about today's conversation. You know, here on Courageous Conversations Live, we leverage the stories of entrepreneurs, of creatives, of leaders to help you live and lead with greater courage. And joining me on this episode is Joe Pettit. Joe, thanks for being my guest today.
Pierre, thank you. The honor is all mine. I'm excited for this conversation today.
And I'm excited that you are hanging out with us. If you're stopping the scroll or even watching the replay of this, we thank you so much in engaging in the conversation. Hop in the comment section. We love to do shout outs. If you got any questions for Joe during our conversation, drop them in the comment section and we'll be sure to answer them as best as we can. Also, hit that share button. The things that Joe will be dropping in this conversation, listen, they're going to be so good. I don't want you to be stingy. I need you to share them with somebody else. All right. It's going to be a powerful conversation that you want your friends and other leaders in your network to hear about. And already checking in with us in the comment section is the leadership coach, Antonio Lennon, checking in with us on LinkedIn. So, all right, Joe, let us know, man. 30 seconds, Cliff Notes version, business card, commercial version. Give us a snapshot of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, if you're struggling to get the most out of your team, if you're also trying to improve relationships, whether that be through communication or just be able to do conflict prevention, I help folks be able to build better relationships, whether that's with your team, customers, or with your spouse. Yes, I believe that all communication tools and all the self-awareness tools that we've all heard about are the things that we can help improve all aspects of our life. Because if you don't have a good relationship at home or at work, then we also need to take a look at yourself. And so what we're trying to do is look at it from an inward approach out to get in to help teams to be a better me so that I can be a better we.
Okay, Joe, that's awesome. So you got to frame that for us. You gave us the Cliff Notes, the commercial version. What inspired you to go into this line of work where you're working with teams or you're working with individuals in their personal and professional lives, really to be the best version of themselves so they contribute better to their organizations?
Yeah, so let me back up for just a little bit and just kind of give a backstory of who Joe is. So I grew up, I'm a product of a split home. I was very fortunate to be the youngest of three old boys. And I say fortunate because my mom was able to, we had a lot of one-on-one time because my brothers are 7 and 10 years older. So she poured a lot into me as a young man, really showed me how to be the guy who communicates the best, the guy who presents himself the best and how he dresses, how he speaks, and just how he shows up. And so that really boded me very well. I would go on to be the first in my immediate family to graduate high school the traditional way, mainly because my mom had set the bar so high for me. I would go on to earn a college football scholarship to play quarterback at Presbyterian College here in South Carolina. However, what was going on behind the scenes, Pierre, was a lot of things where I wasn't doing what I should be doing. I spiraled into a 16-year addiction of drug and alcohol. During that time, I was doing well on the surface, just like I was in high school and on college. Things on the surface looked good, but there were things going on that were taking root underneath that were not so good and were not conducive of being a great leader. And so it's hard to lead a team when you can't even lead yourself. And so I started to realize something had to change. Things got way worse before they got better. Unfortunately, my wife, we split in 2015. I would go out to live on my own, basically because I just wanted to party and have a good time without anybody telling me I didn't need to do that. 8 months later, I would come back home, really through Celebrate Recovery. I'm really big on my faith as well. And so through all of those types of strengthening pieces, was able to overcome this addiction. And honestly, that's what started it all in 2016, Pierre. So I'm 5 years sober. And honestly, in the last 3 years, this business has taken off onto another level of speaking and training and really helping leaders be their best version so that in turn, they can help their team also thrive and succeed.
Joe, talk to us about the dangers. And I know this is something that you reference in your bio on joepettitinspires.com. Talk to us about the danger sometimes of hiding behind that professional success, because, you know, there are a lot of people who are watching us live or replay who wrestle with, I mean, they're killing it. Their sales goals, their team looks great. They could be coaches or athletes, and they're performing at a high level. They're hitting their numbers. Everyone loves them, and they lean only into that professional success. But in terms of their personal life, it's kind of going by the wayside. Can you walk us through or talk to us about the dangers of only leaning and looking at the professional success side of things?
Yeah, the professional success is something that I see a lot of folks lean on, right? And that's unfortunate because I forget who to credit it truly to, but I never want to be a public success but a private failure,
Hmm.
right? So if I can't see that my family is really thriving to be their best, because if you're married, one of your most important relationships is that with your spouse. If you're a parent, one of the most important relationships is that of your children. And so I say this to say, what good would it do if I stand on a stage and inspire people to take action, to be their best, to really look at their seeds of greatness within them, but then I go home and I'm a jerk?
Hmm.
And it could be indirect type of ways that we speak or address people that are in our homes. I believe that it is ultimately up to each and every one of us as leaders to first work on at home, because you see we've kind of grown imbalanced in where
Mhm.
we really truly lie our success. Because at home it doesn't really deposit into my bank account. At home I don't maybe receive the plaque that goes onto the wall. But ultimately, who am I going to be with for the rest of my life? It's not a company, it's not my clients. It's going to be my family and the generations of the things that I leave with them. And that's why I want to hear more companies really having this conversation with their people, because they'll see their performance at work start to increase if they really are pouring into their personal development. And that means their marital and parenting as well.
We got Greg Mitchell checking in with us. He said athletes are so addicted to success. We want to win. And I think it's, something that all of, even if you're not an athlete, you resonate. If you're high on that particular attribute, sometimes that craving for success and winning causes us to overlook some of the other areas. Joe, I want to ask you, as it relates to, let's talk about leaders who maybe have made a mistake. They've made like a blunder, just really messed everything up. And the weight on them is not necessarily acknowledging whether or not I messed up, because they're okay with acknowledging that. The weight on them is, how do I go back and face my team? How do I go back and face my organization? How do I go back? It's easier for me to maybe just get a different job, maybe just quit and walk away, instead of going back and dealing with the ramifications of the mistake that I made. Can you kind of coach us through some of the ways that we can develop the courage to come back from those situations of adversity?
That's a great point, because so often we make these huge mistakes. And I think it's needed to be said before I address that question. I think it's needed to be said that in the midst of so I work for also during the day, I say this is my day job, is Charleston County School District Nutrition Services. And one of the things that happened here in the midst of this, I received a promotion when I was separated and deep into this addiction. Okay. And what I realized is I wasn't leading my team well at all, because I couldn't lead Joe. So
Mm.
what I did, and this is what I share with leaders, is the first thing you got to do is you got to confront it in private. Okay, the first thing you got to do is confront it in private and seek the help that you need to address it privately. Because what I've learned is that you can use it against me all day long, and that is completely okay with me. I am okay with you using it against me. But I guarantee you that 80% of the people that I share my struggles with and what the step I'm trying to take to overcome it, 80% of them, I'm just going to throw that number out there, are going to rally behind me, hold me accountable. And
Mm.
then what I've learned, Pierre, is when I walk off of the stage after I speak or after I do a training, or the people that kind of come up to me in private, they
Yeah.
said, Joe, I'm so glad that you brought light to this, because I've been struggling a little bit. And you made me realize, whether it's their parenting or whether it's anxiety, whether it's gossip, it may not be substance abuse. But the key is that you just admit it and you stand firm and realize that you're going to have to take, some blows to the cheek, so to speak. And do you have that courage? Do you have that heart to stand back in the ring and know why you shared it? I want to see people overcome to be their best version of themselves.
What does it take to be able to pivot the story? because there are two ways. And if you go to joepettitinspires.com and click on about page, there are two ways to view your narrative. There's one, we could use the same words and tell the story from a disadvantage perspective, from an obstacle, from a woe is me perspective, or we can take the same words in that bio and tell the story from a position of power and change and opportunity. What does it take for a person as they're looking at their narrative to switch the place where they're actually telling that story from, to a place of maybe woe is me or the dark cloud, to a place of telling it from a position of hope and inspiration?
The way that I find, Pierre, is to be able to just share the message as raw and authentic as you are, right? And I believe the more authentic that you are, the more you will just be true to yourself and say, hey, look, raise my hand. I made some mistakes. But Lisa Nichols says it beautifully. She calls it, when you're telling a narrative, the dip, right? You talk about, hey, you're looking at a guy right now who has spoken to thousands of people, encouraged and inspired students to not get abused to drugs and alcohol, to step into who they are, be resilient, right? But then you go down in the dip and you say, it hasn't always been this way. You see, I was so consumed by other people's, how they liked me and how they would see me. And that caused me to go into an addiction, because I was looking at what felt good 5 minutes from now instead of 5 years from now. And then we come back up out of that dip, right? We're coming on the other side and say, that's why I'm passionate to share with Pierre on this Courageous Conversations Live, to be raw and true of who I am, so that we can make sure that you all walk into your true potential of who you are. So I think people have to understand that you find people in the narrative, right? You find people in sharing your story, and you don't have to share everything. You need to share things that you feel the most comfortable, that's going to connect. Because if your intention is good, Pierre, then you're going to be able to really help people be their best version. And that's ultimately what my goal is, of sharing my story and being able to go out and speak to companies, students, so that I can see them pull up out of whatever it is, as I call it in the Seeds of Greatness. They need to pull the weeds in order to plant the true seeds.
Yeah. Dr. Holly shares, home is the base of success that permeates to others. Can you talk to us a little bit, Joe, about the process of rebuilding that home life, something that you walked away from, but as you returned and rebuilt it, is pivotal to your success and your growth. Today, talk to us about what it took and what it's taking to rebuild and strengthen that connection that you have with your family.
Yeah, just really pondering that thought, really being asked this question in front of folks. I mean, this is out here for the whole world, right? Yeah. I get chills that just go all over me, and like tears that start to well up in my eyes, Pierre, because where I am now with my family is breaking. You hear people talk about generational curses. You have to sit down and look at what's been going on for generations. And I never did that until someone really sat me down with my wife and I said, I need you to map out. We're so consumed with this whole ancestry.com, which is awesome. But take that and then try to start identifying those that and researching what were their hangups, what were their successes, so that I can start to take a look. Because let me tell you, addiction, divorce, and finances, and working in a role of a job that you don't really love has all been passed down from generation to generation to me. Wow. But the buck stops here. Yeah. The buck stops here. And so when I made a step towards healing, towards sobriety, towards marital restoration, so ultimately, to me, again, being a guy of faith, I believe it really starts there with being able to have a relationship with Christ. That's me. And so on top of that, you need to start looking at what are the skills that are all around you to help develop the better player, so to speak, right? I want to be the best husband. I want to be Pierre. I want to be Antonio. I want to be Inky. I want to be all these people, not because I want to be greater than, but because my goal is to show my children what happened will not be passed down. And so that's the great part about when this business launched. I told my wife, this is a family business. When I go on stage, my son will be behind the camera. And so far that's been true. He traveled with me last week to Myrtle Beach. And my wife, coming up this year, will be able to leave her position as well, so that she'll be able to handle some more of the admin work. And I'm gonna make her work. Yeah, you know what I mean? She's gonna work, right? No, I'm just kidding. But it's a fun thing because now we laugh and we see. But here's the other piece: we also lead marriage groups, right? You constantly go and get full, but then in the same breath, you go and pour into other people that need that hope and that type of inspiration.
Joe, talk to us a little bit about you mentioned breaking, generational things that have happened that pass down in terms of relationship and finances and approaches to life. How do we identify those same things in our organizations? That legacy, the culture, the toxic culture in our organization that has been passed down to some of us as present leaders in those organizations, and then begin the process of breaking those cycles in a professional context.
I'm so glad you went there with this, because here's the thing that I think the first thing you have to do, it's perfect with this title of this. You got to sit down and have those types of conversations. Then you need to set up an environment. And that's where sometimes pulling in an outsider to come in and really guide you through these types of conversations. It's one of my favorite things to do, because I get to extract out what you're really thinking and what you want to say, but you just don't know if you should say it or could say it. However, once we start to talk to the leadership, because so often, leaders will say, I need you to come in and speak to my team. They just don't feel motivated. I need you to come in and give them a good talk. And so I say, well, how motivated do you feel? Right.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece too, Pierre, is that when you are I love using the word raw, because it evokes an emotion in people. When you're so raw as the person who's facilitating these types of conversations, you start to watch people share more openly and more freely, and they catch themselves. What, did I just say that? And so we talk to the leadership first, and then I believe you have to have these same type of conversations. Let's just say if you're working at the C level, and then you go down to the people that are on the front lines. The key here is that no direct report or two reports above can be in the same room, because we have to get to the root of what some of these things are that have been passed down from generation to generation. Then I think the end piece that what we do is we go and take a look at the end consumer. Ask them, somebody that's on the outside, what do they see? Because if I sent somebody to my website, or I sent somebody to one of my talks, man, you could speak so much life into me of what I keep bringing from one year to the next. That's why it's so important to bring in someone who truly cares about you as an organization. And so you start to have those conversations, you start to just get it off your chest. Now we've identified what is the weed, so to speak, in the garden that's robbing all of the resources. Now we can create a plan with starting with the end in mind and work ourselves towards the main goal, which ultimately is to be better, right? It's to leave a generational legacy instead of a generational curse.
Joe, you got to give us a story, a story or two before we run out of time in this conversation of a training, coaching, keynote presentation, some of the work that you've done. Give us an example of walking away from that event, walking away from that experience or that opportunity and saying, this is why I do what I do. What was the evidence after doing the work that you're aligned with your purpose and that you're in the right space?
Yeah, so I love speaking to all sorts of folks. One of my favorites are definitely entrepreneurs and students. And the reason that I love students is because they are like sponges. And so I'll never forget it. It was really one of the first major speeches that I gave to a student body of about 1,100 students. If you've never stood in front of 1,100 students at a gymnasium and you're the person with the mic, let me tell you, it can be a little bit uncomfortable at first, okay? And so as we're talking, Pierre, one of the things that I used to do, I don't do it anymore, but what I used to do was in the midst is I would have them text through this, this text service. And what they would share, because I really challenge them, is what is a weed that you need to pull? And I keep talking about that thing that's stealing and robbing you of where you're trying to produce, whether it's go to college, whether it's make A's, whether it's have a better relationship with your parent, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I didn't think they were really engaged, okay? Until I went home because I told them I'll respond to all of your stuff. Go to my website at da 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 da, and we made up a URL. 600 responses later, okay?
Wow.
600 responses of students who were pouring their hearts out, talking about all the things that they were struggling with, because it was anonymous enough that I didn't know who they were. But
Yeah.
it was enough of we had created this type of environment because they started sharing and I just started pouring out the answers. I think it took me like 24 hours straight. And I was just literally just pounding on the keyboard, giving the best possible answers that I could, because I'm not a counselor.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
someone who has gone through the ruts, who I've been on the peaks, right? And I've seen what it takes to get here, and I've seen what happens on that slow decline down into the valleys. And so what was so awesome, I said, man, this is what it is all about, because I knew for a fact that as they were sharing, then I got a call back from the counselor, and I got a call back from the administration, from the assistant principal, that says, Joe, we've never seen students share and be so open publicly, and then kept the conversation going weeks after the engagement. And I said, look, that's the
Wow.
return on investment for you and for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing story, Joe. Man, you got to tell us. You got to tell us at this stage, if you're watching on LinkedIn, who should click on your profile and get connected with you. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, who should go to joepettitinspires.com, click that contact page and send you a message. Who are you looking to connect with and work with at this time?
Yeah, so I'm looking to help leaders be able to better lead, not manage, better lead their teams. But ultimately, I want to help you lead yourself first. And so that could be from, I've told you that I've worked for 7 years in school nutrition. I kind of really hit hard on that platform, but then also really being able to go out and speak to students, because the most pivotal time of my life was when I was 17, 18, 19 years old. And I was in such a sponge stage, and some things were good, some things weren't. And so, if you click on the profile to contact me, it could be individually, we can speak in privately, but ultimately, I think you want to have me in front of your team to see what's really going on underneath the surface, because I'll be able to help them pull it out and set up that safe environment so that you can go on and we can go on and help find those solutions together.
Joe, such a great conversation. It has just flown by. 23 minutes later. I want to thank you. I've been doing this recently with my guests. I want to thank you in advance for all the people that you're going to help, all of the organizations, all of the schools. We're going to reach out to you. We're going to click on your LinkedIn profile. We're going to go to joepettitinspires.com and send you a message and get connected and do work with you. And that work is going to lead to some amazing transformation. So I want to thank you in advance on behalf of them. And I want to thank you in advance for being my guest today.
Thank you so much, Pierre. It's been an honor for all that was listening live and watching a replay. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's one thing that we can never give you back. So it's truly been an honor.
Great stuff today, Joe. We'll talk soon, okay?
Yes, sir.